Boop. Did that work? I think it did. Okay, welcome to OnSet. Oh, it suddenly seems dark, right? I don't know why. It didn't seem dark a minute ago.
Maybe I should put that light on.
Maybe it was that light in there, yeah. Who knew we were being lit by the light in the other room all along? I can't tell because it's, yeah, that's it. Wow, that's pretty good. That's the makeup room light. Hey there. We should be live, I guess. Let me know if you can hear me. I'm probably loud. It looks like I'm very loud. No Seth today. Seth's on the plane coming back from Las Vegas. He's been out there covering the NAB show for Adorama, so you've probably seen those videos here on here. So let me know how I sound. Oh, I probably should have introduced myself. Hey there, welcome to OnSet. I'm Daniel Norton here with Cadence. So let me know, guys, how it sounds. I am kind of flying solo here. Well, not solo because, and I got Nikki over here in the wings to make sure that I don't screw up too much. So I'm somewhat solo on the tech side, right? So I'm doing all this, like, you should see all these computers. It's pretty awesome. So anyways, if you can't hear me or there's anything weird or whatever, let me know. Right in the chat where you're from. I like when people do that. Everybody's doing that today. The volume is fine. Okay. I turned it down a little bit, so let me know. Hello from Germany. Oh, need more volume. Okay, yeah, because I turned it down because it looked like I was blown out. Okay, let's go up. All right, I think that's probably good. I'll check it again in a second. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm happy to be back here in New York City for Adorama. So today we're going to talk about something that has actually been a subject. I'm actually completely freaked out by the fact that lights me up every time. I did not realize that. See, you learn things. There's a mirror in here. Maybe this deserves an entire video. There's a mirror with a bunch of light bulbs around it, and that is my light. Anyways, today we're going to talk about lighting for, oh, this is actually relevant, for kind of video and stills, because more and more, and this has happened years ago. I'm going to tell a story. I feel like telling a story today. When I first started working with Adorama years ago, they brought me in to be a lighting consultant, because clearly I know about the, and one of the things a lot of people were doing was they were starting to incorporate more video into their work. These are still photographers. So one thing we talked a lot about was constant lighting and how to light for video and things like that, interviews especially, that's a big thing. And now it's become even more so, right? The cameras are I don't think there's too many, if any, kind of mid to pro level cameras that aren't also excellent video cameras. I'm shooting this with a Z6 Nikon, this video. And it's just something that we can all get into. And there's lots of hybrid lights now, lots of funky things going on. So I want to talk a little bit about possibly putting together a kit that you could use for these kind of things, some of the pitfalls, some of the advantages to using certain kinds of lights. And we'll just kind of create a little bit of an interview light and kind of a little bit of a headshot light with pretty much the same lighting. Now, the most simple thing to do, obviously, is just to light it for the interview and then just take stills. But there are advantages to kind of using some of the flash equipment and stuff like that, and we'll talk about that. Before I get too much into that, though, let's see if I can do this. Let me get rid of that. If you don't know, I am hosting a podcast now. A Voice with Daniel Norton. It's pretty much everywhere if you just look for it. We could definitely use some listeners. We talk about the philosophy of photography as well as a little bit of the life of being a creator and stuff like that. So jump on to your favorite podcast place and see that. I will put a link in the chat, which I'm going to try to do right now. Hopefully this is a link to that and not to my grocery list. Yep, it is. Okay, good. That's it. That goes to the Anchor page. This podcast is on Anchor, which allows you to send messages in. So if you listen to the podcast and you agree with me or disagree with me, which is probably much more likely, you can call in and let me know, and then we'll talk about it. So not live calling, but you can leave me a message. In any case, enough of the commercial. Let's get to this. Let's see. Let's go back up here. Boop. Back on me again. All right, let's go piece by piece. I'm going to close this over here. Let's see what we got going on in the chat. How's it going, everyone? Hey. Oh, thanks, Alvin. Oh, Massachusetts, my hometown, home state.
All of Massachusetts is your home state.
All from Mars. Now, is it women or are you allowed to say men are from Mars, right? And this is an old joke, no?
Yes.
Women are from, okay, forget it. This was a book that was very popular. I never read it because I was a child when it came out. A very, very young child. So let's talk headshots, portraits. So here I'm talking very specifically more of a headshot, I'll call it. In other words, something you might use for like a corporate thing. When we get into portraiture, we can get into a lot of different funky kinds of lights. And we're probably not going to do that here. We're going to go real clean with the light, and we're going to set it up that would be really good for what would be considered like kind of a headshot portrait, like a clean portrait, corporate portrait, something you could use for business, something you could use for, the yearbook, the stuff yearbooks, but not like a really kind of funky portrait. At least we won't start that way, but I'm sure we'll get there eventually, right? And I'm just going to go over, I'm going to use 3 different types of lights here, and I'm just going to kind of go through what they are at first. If you have questions about them specifically, I will do my best to answer them, and I'll let you know the names of them and all that other goodness. So let's start there. Hold on. New York and the UK. There's a New York and the UK. I guess that wouldn't be Old York? Well, okay, there you go. All right. So anybody who've watched anything that I do knows I'm going to jump on this right away. These are my preferred constant light sources. They're from Datolight. They're LEDs, meaning that they don't get particularly hot, right? Because they're using LED bulbs. And in these cases, they're dimmable. They can change color temperature from daylight to tungsten. They're great to mix. This is the DLED 7, I think this one is, which is kind of a small one, not in the world of Datolight, not tremendously expensive. I've fixed it with a softbox. This is a great light for many, many reasons. Advantage here is that you can do a lot with it as far as special accessories that aren't as common in the flash world. So if we want to throw a pattern in the background, we want to do any kind of special effects like that. One common thing that we used to do back in the day is you would throw something like a shadow pattern on the wall, like a window blind or something, right? On a blank wall, and then you would use the projector to knock it out of focus. That way you could shoot with more depth of field, but it still looked like shallow. It had that kind of trick. So you can do stuff like that with a light like this. It's got a lot of versatility. You can use it for a lot of different things. It's one of my preferred lights. However, if we're talking about overpowering light in space, things like that, not like a flash, right? This is not powerful like a flash, which is why flash is great. But you're thinking, well, flash is not going to be good for an interview. But some of the new flash units they've been coming out with, like this one, this is actually there's another generation since then. You've probably seen me use this a bunch. This is a Profoto B10. The modeling light in this, so the modeling light in a flash is traditionally something that is used so you can see where the light's pointed. But more and more flash companies are making the modeling lights very bright and also good color so that when we use them, we can actually use them as constant lights for portraits and interviews and stuff. This is one of those kind of lights. There is a B10X, I think it's called. Yeah, X, which has a brighter modeling light. I haven't got that one. So we're going to use this guy. I've affixed it with my normal softbox like I normally would. Advantage here, not as versatile for the constant light source, right? A lot of the flash accessories don't, there's not projectors and things like that available for it, but very powerful if I want to turn the flash part of it, and I can make the space dark, which we do a lot. I'm going to use it more or less as a constant light today, but you could switch back and forth while you're in the middle of shooting if you go with something like this. Another advantage, being that I'm assuming a lot of people watching this are photographers, is that you may already own something like this, right? So we can still use it. The third thing that I'm going to use, and we're going to talk about a little bit, is this light over here. I put it so far away. From Rotolight. This is a EOS 2. I actually did a video when this was launched. It's on the channel. It's got a lot of cool features, but the main thing I'm going to point out here is that this is an RGBW light. It can change color to like any color. We can make it red, we can make it purple, we can make it green, whatever we like. Also, we can make it daylight and tungsten balance. It does have this soft diffuser on the front, which will help break up the light. You can get soft boxes and stuff for it. I don't have that. This is going to be bright, battery powered with the one I have here. And it does have a capability to flash. It's not really the same as an actual flash. It's a little bit different, and I'm not going to get into that here. So we're not going to use that ability. We're going to treat it like a constant light for this, but know that it does have this kind of ability where it can flash the LEDs to get brighter. But we're not really going to use it like that. Because for me, if I'm going to use flash, I would just use my flash. But if you want to build a kit of these, it could be a useful feature for you. Okay, let's see what we got. Watching from the sofa. Nice. All right, guys. All right, let me know if you have any questions. That was kind of the gear. Kind of trying to get the gear out of the way to start with. Let's build this thing up. So we're going to assume that we want to build out an interview or a portrait. Now, I've got my black background set up. We're going to go to a white eventually. The space is not that attractive. if you are entering into a space and you need to interview somebody, you've got to think of your environment. One of the main things we're going to think about is the amount of light in the environment. Even if you had tremendously bright lights, like big HMI lights, you wouldn't want to put them super close to the subject and blind them with these lights so you could make the room get darker. We want to take control of our space differently than flash. When we're using constant lights, we want to try to get rid of as much of the available light as possible by finding a good location where there's less available light or constant light bothering you, like the lights in the ceiling, or we're going to just turn the lights off, right? That we're going to need to do that, because if we don't do that, then like I say, you're going to need a ridiculous amount of light to get anything. That being said, if you're trying to be fast, like when we first did the video for the Profoto B10, we did the interview stuff in daylight and we just use this as a fill. So you can mix it up a little bit, but for the point of this, let's just go straight up, get rid of the light by turning off the lights in the space, which we'll do once we're set up. I'm going to use the data light as my key light here. The reason for that is because I'm going to do a kind of a classic key fill, and almost always you want your fill light to be bigger than your key light. Also, the data light is marginally brighter than the Profoto's modeling light, so it gives me a little bit more to work with since we're going to want that to be our brightest light. So, I mean, of all of these lights, the rotolight is the brightest as far as like actual output, but because I don't have a softbox for it, it's not going to be my primary light for my shot. There we go. All right, so I'm going to put it over here. Now, of course, this is a mains powered, as I say, light, which means I got to be wary of cords. If you were actually in an office doing an interview or something, you can actually come off that a little bit. I'm going to come this way a little bit. You would probably not put the cord right in front of the subject I'm doing here, but since this is a demonstration, we're going to do what we got to do. So what we want to do with this is effectively move it in. When we're doing an interview kind of style light, you need to consider where the person is going to be looking. Now in a portrait, they're generally looking at the camera, right? But in an interview, they're usually looking at the interviewer who is next to the camera. So one thing you might want to do, which is different than when I set up for a portrait, is you may want to put your camera in place first so you know where it's going to be. So we'll actually do that. That way there'll be more cords for me to trip over. So I'm going to take my camera. This is just the same camera I always use. It's Nikon Z6ii. I do have it tethered right now to capture one because we were going to take pictures as well, but for now I'll just untether it because I do not want to trip over a cord, at least not this early in the stream. South of France, nice. All right, so I'm going to raise this up. Now, of course, we're going to go horizontal with all of these. Now, again, two things you want to consider, and this is a little bit different than a portrait for some people. We're not necessarily going to go with a really long lens here because, again, an interview is a conversation. I want to talk with the person. So I want to, since I'm by myself, we're talking a single person here, I'm going to want to be close to the camera so I can make sure it's not goofing up. And I'm going to want to be able to talk to her easily. So I'm going to want to set, like this is at 70 right now, we'll set it at 50, which is kind of a normal length. And we're going to move in, and you can frame it up however you desire. But keep in mind that, again, I have to decide where I'm going to stand. If I stand here, and I'm talking to Kate, and she's going to be looking this way, the light is going to be more on one side of her face than the other, right? It's going to be casting shadow. Typically, we want the light to be on the side which they're going to be looking. So I'm going to stand on this side of the camera because it's easier for me to control the camera this way. And because of that, I'm going to put the light on this side. So generally, whatever side you stand on, you want to put your key light. This is for general basic things. So we're going to fire this up. Actually, you know what I can do? You know what I can do for you guys? That's why I had it plugged in. I knew there was a reason. I don't just do things randomly. All right, I'm going to plug this in because what I'm going to actually do, and this should work. It's untested, but it should work. I'm actually going to put it in photo mode, just because it's easier. I'm going to go to 1/60th of a second because I'm shooting 30 frames. And I'm going to go to 5.6 because that'll give me a decent amount of depth of field. And then what we're going to do here is we're going to actually adjust our ISO to where we want it to be. I'm guessing somewhere around 800-ish is going to be a good place. And hopefully, nope, it didn't appear. I'll try something here. See if we can get this to fire up into capture one of this. Okay. Questions, let's see. Sweden. Okay, so do I consider that the walls and roof and the floor and stuff are white? In this case, it's not going to be a huge deal because my lights are so close to the subject. If my lights were far away from the subject, and thus the light would be bouncing off them and coming back to the subject, it would make a difference. Because remember the inverse square law. Even if this light hit this wall over here, it's so much closer to cadence that none of that reflected light is going to affect her. If I was right next to the wall, or if I had the light further back, yeah, I would have to consider it, but not in this case. Okay, let's see. I'm trying to fire up capture one here to make the thing appear. Cool. Plug that in. It's thinking. There we go. If I go like this, I should be able to see through the camera. Yep, I can. All right, so now we can see through the camera. There you are. All right, we can see she's a little dark. She's dark because, of course, this is the light in the space. Now, I could just work with, let's say I was in an office and they were like, oh, you can't turn off the lights. I mean, this is a couple stops, maybe like a stop and a half under. So it's not ridiculously affecting the shot. It's certainly there. We can see that it's bad light, right? I can't just come in here and go, oh, I can shoot at high ISOs, it's great, because it would just be bad light. And this is light that I set up. I mean, these are actually like LEDs. But I'm gonna come in here and we're gonna turn off the lights in the space. Not yet. But first I'm gonna turn this on. Again, because this is always about control, we're gonna put this up pretty much almost as bright as it can go because I wanna knock out as much natural light as possible or available light. We can already see that that takes away most of the light that's in here by itself. Right, we can pretty much see that. Now I know the quality is not great because it's coming through capture one, but you get the general idea. And then if I stand over here and I'm talking to her and I'm like, hey, cadence, blah, 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 we see we have nice light on her face, right? We can see that way. Because remember, in an interview, they're going to be looking. Now you also want to frame it up so that she's got some space to look. You know, we're doing an interview, so actually if you could step that way, half a step, that would be easier because I'm going to be working on a tiny space. I'm going to put her over here in this corner. I like to get a little tight in, like that. And then we're talking to her, it's like, hey, you know, where were you born, right? And then she'll tell us, right? Or maybe she won't, I don't know. So, and then there we go, we got that. So you guys see how that works, right? For a backdrop. Now, because I'm in a studio, this would be a good start for a backdrop. Because I'm in a studio, I'm putting out a backdrop. If I were doing an interview, I would probably, like a straight up interview, I probably would try to shoot in the location the person was in. So it really depends on what you're doing it for. Could be white, could be black. Paper is always a good way to start for me because paper can be changed. Paper is disposable, you can change paper. So I probably would start with a paper backdrop, like something from Savage would be good. Pop-up. No, I would not suggest a pop-up background, not unless you absolutely need that. Again, some of the pop-up backgrounds are fine. But the problem with the pop-up backgrounds is that they tend to get wrinkled. So unless you're worried about, unless you're able to steam it out, you have to worry about that. I tend to go with paper if I'm going for a background because it'll be flat. That's my personal taste. Obviously, they sell tons and tons of pop-up backgrounds and there's a reason for that. It's just not my general look or style. Okay, so we can see here that we can get a nice look this way. If I want to bring, let me bring this back over so we can see again. Let me go. Oh, why am I touching my screen with my finger? This is what happens when you're using an iPad and then also. All right, so I can take my Profoto light, right? And by the way, this is running off a battery right now, but I would not recommend. I'll do this first. That way we're not. I would not recommend running this off a battery for an actual interview and stuff because the battery is not going to last that long. These batteries are not designed to run the modeling light for tons of time. They're designed for the flash, really, right? Profoto B10 allows for you to plug it into the mains, though, so that you can run it indefinitely. So if you're going to do this for an actual interview, I would plug it in. I'm just trying to not have as many cords here right now because we're in the middle of a demo. We're going to move stuff a ton of times. All right, so I'm going to take this, and I'm going to put it right next to my lens. Oh, cool, I'm getting a phone call. That's always important. I'm going to put it right next to my lens, because I want this to be a fill light. Fill light is going to come from the lens so that it doesn't create its own set of shadows. I'm going to turn this on. And we're gonna, again, just put the modeling light on. I've got them both set at the same temperature, which is basically daylight. And we're gonna go from here. Now I got a really flat light going on, right? Let's kill the lights in the space. Okay, we're killing the overheads. Let's go here so you guys can see. We can see this is really flat and even, which is not really that interesting. So what we're gonna do is, looking through the camera, I'm just gonna take the modeling light and I'm gonna, of the fill, and I'm just gonna dial it down. Oh, I'm changing the color temperature, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take the modeling light of the fill and I'm just gonna dial it down until I start to get the shadow density that I want. And that looks pretty good. And then if she's here and I'm like, hey, Cadence, where are you from? You know, and she's like, hey. Yeah, there she is, right? She's from the place she's from, right? So now we have a balance in the light, right? It's real simple, we're looking at it. Super easy to do, to balance it, right? And you guys can still see me all right with this. Okay, almost midnight in Poland, oh man. Cool, okay, I hope that you guys can see the video here. Yeah, the EOS 2 is about 12, yeah, okay. Basic light, Neo 3, smaller. Yeah, okay. That sounds about right. I'm not sure about the pricing on everything. If you're going to use an LED panel for this and not add a softbox to it, I would definitely go with a larger one. Because, for instance, since I have, you can turn the light back on, sir. Since I have the data light here, which is definitely a smaller light source, you know, the actual light by itself, I've got it in a softbox. So if you're not going to use a softbox, I would go with a bigger LED panel. That's kind of a good point. If you're going to put modifiers on it, a smaller one might be fine depending on the power level. I will fire up the other light now though, just to add it as like a third kicker light or whatever. Right now I'm just doing a black background to really consolidate everything for you guys, but we'll take the background away in a second. But let's just fire this up just so we can put this in the shot. Now again, I could use this as my key. I'm not sure if you can see me or not. Yeah, you guys can see me. Let's switch to this camera. See, this is all the work Seth does. You guys have to. Nope, that's it. Boom, there we go. There we go. Okay, you can see where I got it. I'll have to get my race. Okay. All right, so I generally put the separation or hair light on the opposite side of the key light. That's just how I like to do it. So I'm going to take this light, put it over here. Hopefully I'm not going to blind this camera. I'm going to kick it on. Now I know this is considerably brighter than the other lights, probably by at least a stop. So I'm going to turn it down, let's see, until we get, because it would be better if I could see through the camera, but I'm just going to eyeball it. And I'm going to actually add a little bit of warmth to it. This is one of the advantages of lights that change color, right? Is that we can add a little bit of something. I'm just going to make it a little bit warmer just to give it a little bit of funkiness to it. We can go down to about 36K, just a little bit of warmth, and I'm going to come up to about 20% of this light. So we kill those overheads again. All right, I'm going to turn off my fill light for a second. I can just look at her, look through the camera. Okay, let's switch over here so you guys can see. And what we're going to do here is, we can see that we can barely see it. So I'm actually going to come over here and I'm going to turn it up. Until we start to see it better. Okay, now I've doubled its power by bringing it up to 25% to 50% from 25. There we go, now we can see it. Now, again, if she looks that way, she's gonna get a kind of a hard light on her face, but she's not gonna look that way, right? She's gonna be looking this way because I'm talking to her. I'm gonna be like, hey, Cadence, blah, blah. And we can see that she's got that nice warm light on her hair. You know, we can actually raise it a little bit so it feels a little more natural. Like that, like the sun, right? It's almost like the sun's coming through. And this is actually right now, without the fill light, if we kick the fill light in, you see it's just very subtle. And we can bring the fill light, I can bring it up more, wherever we like it. Now that we have all the lights in play, we've got it. And we can actually shoot, and right now I'm at a 60th of a second, 5.6. I can very easily make a portrait like this and it will be fine if they're gonna be posed, right? If they're gonna like stay locked in a pose. That is not the right camera angle. There we go. There it is. If they're going to stay on a pose, this is fine shutter speed wise. If you needed to crank it, I could turn the flash on and use the rest of it as fill, right? Because I still have that flash ability, if that makes sense. I skipped your question. Well, you can see I'm here by myself, so I may skip questions here and there. You might want to just ask it again. Okay. Let's see. Cadence, the greatest smile in the USA. There you go.
Thank you.
There you go. This is actually the truth. 100%. All right. So this is your basic setup. Again, we can use it for a portrait. We can use it for an interview. This is kind of the go-to for me. So I'm going to show it again. So we can come over here so you guys can see it. So again, I'm talking to her and I'm like, hey, where you're from, blah, 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 blah. Right? And then if I want to do a portrait after, I can then just simply have her turn towards the camera and boom, I can make a shot. Right? And now I think I took a picture. I think I did a picture. And there we go. You know, we got a nice clean portrait as well. Right? Easy as that. With the same light, no problem. And that was super fast. Sometimes I'm so fast. It's the coffee, right? This is how we do this.
I think it is the coffee.
All right, good. But that's good though. So now we've got I wanted to get through the black really quickly because I want to show you on the black background to really highlight how this works. But let's get rid of the background and let's see what we would do in more of an environment because I think that's really where you're going to find these situations. Okay, did you ask the question again? Which one is better, wired strobes or battery operated? Well, that really depends on a lot of things. If you are going to be on a location where there's no mains power, well, I would say battery operated is better. If you're always going to be inside where there is mains power, I would say plug-in is probably better. Better because the price is going to be cheaper, you know, per watt second. If you do a mix of things, then you have to decide what's more important to you. And that's really like almost any piece of gear. There is no better. All the people that tell you this is better or that's better, they're probably not very accurate, is the way I'll say that. Oop, knocking things over. Don't worry about that. Nobody saw it. We'll cut that out in editing. All right. All right, so I'm over here. I don't even know where the thing is. All right, I'm going to roll this up. Actually, this happened. I'm having a weird flashback. Once before, years ago, this happened, and I had a whole roll of paper. And it took me a long time to roll it up, and it was really embarrassing. So I did it faster this time, so I don't feel as embarrassed by it. Thank you. That wasn't bad, right? Okay, so if we're actually going to do an interview in a space, which is probably what you're going to be more likely to do, what we want to do is we want to actually set the person up so they're comfortable. Seth is not here, so we can use his chairs. Right, we can put her in the direct, and then we know which way we want her to face, right? So we're going to go like that, and we're going to go like that. So she's the director now. Boom. Now we've got her in a fixed space. That means she's going to stay in one spot, which is going to help us for the interview. You don't want to be watching an interview where people are going like this constantly, right? This is bad. Thank you. You're welcome. Cut that out editing, but it's live. Exactly. Yes, this is true. Story of my life. All right. All right, so now I'm going to use a slightly longer lens here because now I have to make some compromises, right? I'm looking at the space as it is, and I'm looking what's back there, right? And I've got behind her, I've got like this wall section that's funky. I want to keep it plain, let's say. Well, actually, no, we're not going to do that. I'm totally changing my mind. We're doing this, right? We're going to throw a pattern back there because I mentioned it earlier. We're going to make the space look a little neater. So let's switch up what we were doing here. Let's see, let me put those back up so you guys can see what we got. So right now, again, this is mostly just the light in the space. Actually, turn off the light, that's just that, right? Gray background, meh, right? Whatever, it's something. But we're gonna make it nicer. We're gonna try to anyways. Nah, that's we gotta jazz it up a little bit. We could turn the lights back on. Sturdy C-stand, yeah? All right. Okay, so here we are. We're starting from scratch again. I'm going to look at the tools I have. And again, this is where you have to decide, right? When we're talking about better or worse or whatever, what is the tool? All of these tools that I have here are good, right? Every one of them. I've got the Profoto strobe, which is very nice and battery powered and powerful as a flash. I've got the data light, which has a lot of versatility. I've got the rotolight, which is a powerful constant light that can change colors. So we have a lot of options here. But we got to think about our situation. The background here is kind of bleh, right? And what we want to do is make it a little more jazzy. So I'm going to use, and I know that these exist. So there's lots of ways you can do this. I'm not set up for it, and I don't want to spend 10 minutes digging through stuff, so I'm not going to do it. You can use what's called a cookie, and I've done, actually, I'll look. Hang on, guys. I'm going to do the thing that I'm not supposed to be doing when I'm by myself, which is digging through this. Okay, now, if you do so a cookie, I'll just explain it. A cookie is effectively when you take a piece of, let's say, cardboard or something, and you cut holes into it. You shine a light at it, it projects that shape onto the background to break it up, to make it interesting. This is easy to do and inexpensive. You could hold a sheet of, a set of blinds right there and shoot light through it. You could do these things. If you want to be more efficient and you do it a lot, then you can buy what's called a projector, which is what we're going to use today. But if you don't have that, you can still do this effect. You just need a hard light source, so a small light source, and you just need enough space to create that shadow on the background. But like I say, we're going to use a projector because I find that to be simpler, especially since I have it. You know, it's like, Daniel spent the money on the projector. He's going to use it. So this is by Datalight. And actually, they do make these. I think Westcott makes one that you can put onto a flash as well. But that doesn't do us any good right now, so because we're doing a constant light. So this is a projector. It's just like when you were in, you know, grammar school. Do they still call it grammar school? Or is that like not a term that people use anymore? Grade school, elementary school. You know, when you went there and you had the class and they like put the projector. This is it, except without the sound. Nope. But instead of projecting a movie about, you know, biology or whatever, we're going to project a pattern. This is going to allow us to jazz up the background, make it a little more interesting, and I'm going to show you we're going to make it kind of out of focus. Okay. And again, this is the reason why having something like this is useful instead of just having a bunch of flashes. If you're going to, you know, pick up and buy something for this process. Okay. So I don't know what they can see. Can they see the background wall? No, they cannot. Okay, a little bit. Let me switch to the other camera. Boom, there we go. Now all I have to care about is the circle that's behind her, right? I don't have to cover the whole wall. I just want to make sure that I'm covering what's behind her. And you can see right there, maybe you can see, I don't know, that that's like a bit focused, which is probably going to work for us. I'm using a relatively shallow depth of field. All right, so in or with the projector, I've got what are called gobos or cookies, depending on who you talk to. And like this one's a breakup. Oh, I'm going to show you in the wrong camera. This one's a breakup. And what we're going to do with this, wow, Seth is really working it, huh? When he's over here. Going to give him a raise from the nothing that I pay him. All right. All right, let's see. Ooh, it's like you're in space. Okay, and this is going to allow us, can we kill the overhead lights? Okay, so this is going to allow us to create a space behind her. Is a 250 watt strobe? Sorry if I'm skipping people. Let's see. I think I see there's a bunch of questions. Hold on. Okay. Do you definitely need C-stands? Oh, 250 watts strong enough for outside? It depends on what you're going to do. Boy, I say it depends a lot, don't I? That sounds not. Let me not be helpful. No. So, okay, is 250 watts enough? It depends. If you're going to put it in a very small box and keep it very close to somebody and you're not trying to get it like super, super dark, then probably. I'm going to move you closer actually because I don't want to. I mean, I could make the circle really huge, but it's just easier to move cadence. Well, actually, yeah, let me just do it this way. Let's see if I can do this. I'm going to move back a little bit, but not too much. Yeah, yep, there we go. Okay, so we're creating something kind of interesting. Hopefully, I don't want to move back too far because I'm all wired in. You normally wouldn't be shooting like this. Okay, so we can see now we have this pattern. Whether you like that or not, this is just for demonstration purposes. You can put whatever you like back there. You can actually get these cut into all different shapes and sizes. And what you can do with them is, you can put logos back there, all kinds of cool stuff you can do. But for our purposes, for an interview, this is just to make this plain. Remember that wall was like blue. This is going to make the wall less blue. Okay, so before I put this back on, just for dramatic effect, I'm going to grab the Profoto. So yeah, I'm telling a lot of stories today. When I lived in Florida back in the day, we used to shoot on the beach all the time with small flash, like on camera type flash, and it works totally fine. You don't need a ton of power. If you use a small box and you keep it close. Okay, there she is. Okay, now speaking of not having a ton of power. Okay, so here's the first place we're going to run into an issue with power. This is turned up all the way, right? Oh no, it's not. No, it's not, Daniel. Now it is. Okay. Oh, not bad. Okay, this is turned up all the way, and we can see that. Again, I'm talking to her. I'm like, hey, Cadence, blah blah blah. We can see that it's still a bit dark. So now we're going to have to make adjustments. Typically, the ISO is the simplest way to do it. But I also can see that I'm at 5.6. And this camera has a good, good tracking with focus. So I think I can open up a bit and not worry too much about it. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Looking back at the exposure. I'm eyeballing the exposure based on what I think looks the best. That looks pretty good. And so now we've got a nice exposure on her. And again, if she's looking this way, la, 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 la. And if I wanted to take a picture, I still can, right? And if I wanted to, I could actually even use the flash to make the photo if I wanted to, right? And that's going to allow me to stop action if we've got her moving and stuff. Now, of course, we're not just going to use 2 lights because, as everybody knows, the more lights you use, the more you get paid. So let's bring this rotolight in. And again, it's going to go against what I said earlier, but we're using what we have to the best of what we can do with it. This is smaller than our key light, so it's not going to be a soft fill, so we have to be very careful about the balance. So I'm going to turn it on. It's going to be super bright, so be wary of that, because I had it cranked up, if you remember before. And once again, I'm just going to look through. Now I have it a little bit warm too, which honestly doesn't bother me that much. And I've got it around 25%. I'm just looking. Could you look here just so I can see for the exposure? I'm just going to bring it in until it looks where I want it to look. That's 18%, and that looks pretty good to me. Okay, so now we've got a fill. It's a little bit on the warm side. It's, I guess over here is where I have to look at it. Our background is this funky pattern. We could also make that warm. We can't make it cool, really, although this is a dual color light. I'm at 5,500. Let me see if I go to, I think this goes to 6,000, so it's a 6,800. That might have made it a little bit cooler. Yeah. Now we've got a little bit of coolness going on, a little warmth in the shadows, a little coolness on the background for separation, and we've got something interesting there. Let's see. Roll Duvetine, yeah. If you question, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Put a capital Q in front of the question. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that, Alvin. Let's see. Yep, that is actually correct. Extra small video pro. Question, if one is supposed to get a video at 30, why are settings at 160? Huh? Oh, well that is a very good question. Okay, lights. Whew. I suppose I should have explained this a little bit, just for people that may not be used to shooting video. Typically your shutter speed in video is going to be double your frames per second, or it could be as low as your frames per second and you're still good. So you could shoot 30 or 60. If you're shooting 30 frames per second, then you shoot at a shutter speed of 60 normally. You could go as low as 30. If you shoot faster than that, you might start to get weird looking, like kind of overly stiff frame. And if you shoot too slow, you get this almost like shift and blur that you get, which doesn't look natural. So double your frame rate is your best place to be. If you want to shoot 24 frames like everybody was doing back in the day, you would shoot 50th of a second. And there you go. That's the reason why. That is a very good question that I did not cover, and I appreciate you asking. Getting together, yeah, you can use multiple lights. There's a good point. All right, so that all looks good. Let's put something cooler on the background, though. That breakup, we're not loving that. We don't love that breakup. Let's do something cooler. You know I like cool stuff. So I have a couple of things here we can play around with. Let's say, for instance, Cadence was working for like a tech company. Ooh, red. And it's called Red Tech because I have a red thing. I'm making it up. I can drop in this thing. Ba-bong. Not bad, right? Go ahead, turn off the overheads. All right, now we've got this little gem thing here. It's truly outrageous. Now we could, now that looks a little too perfect, so we can actually knock it, am I showing it so people can see it? I am, right? Yep, okay. I can knock it a little out of focus. And that's what I was talking about before about simulating depth of field, right? We can now make it look like there's a much deeper field there because this, this projector allows us to do that. That's very difficult to do if you are using a cookie where you're holding, a piece of cardboard up. It's not impossible, but it's very difficult. Very, very difficult. I'm looking for my cookie case. Cookie case. It's literally called a cookie case. You don't want to put like regular cookies in there because they will be crumbling. All right. What else have we got? That's really the best. Actually, this is my favorite one. Let's put this one in first. Now I'm just going to do different cookies because I feel like it. But this is one of my favorite cookies. It's just slashes. And I just find they work really well. They kind of look like Flash Gordon a little bit. And of course you can twist it for whatever look you want. So that's like a breakup, right? And again, I can control this. I'm just happen to have it on full power, but I can actually play around with, oops, turn it off. I can actually play around with the dimness of it. Well, that's the color, hold on. I can make it darker. And also what I can do here is, I'm gonna make it warm, because since we have a warm fill, we wanna maybe create like this vibe, like this overall, like smushy vibe. Right, and now we've got something that's a little bit more kind of end of the day vibe going on there. Okay, oop, wrong one. I don't think I've screwed this up too many times today. All right, let's see what we got. Any questions, thoughts, concerns? Hello, I'm doing good now. Yes, please press thumbs up if you are enjoying this content. If you are not, oh, it does match your shirt. If you're not enjoying this content, then you could pretend like you are and put a thumbs up. Set this in here, so we have to get a lot of thumbs up when he's not here so we can make him feel bad. We've got to, All right, so yeah, exactly, it does match your shirt. So that actually works, right? We've got like a bit of a vibe. And it's easy enough to change up and mess with. And one thing I'm going to say here is that let's change things up. All right, I obviously did what I believe to be the best, I'll say that after I just said nothing was the best, use of these. But we could use them in different ways. Like for instance, you might think, well, hey Daniel, because that's my name, I should use the rotolight as my key because it's the brightest of the lights. Okay, let's try that. Let's say that we're going to use the rotolight as the key, so we'll just have it work this way to make life easier. And we're like, yeah, man, we can really turn this up to maximize the power out of it, right? It's so bright. Put it back to 5600 so it makes sense. Or 5000. I said it, are you blinded? I set it at 5,000 because that's where my camera, oh my God. Wow. All right, so that looks pretty good. I just want to show you for a second what that looks like, guys, because it's silly. So obviously we adjust our camera. So I can be like, no, I want to drop my ISO down to 100-ish. Okay. First of all, you're blinded, right? She's completely blinded. And also look at the light difference between that and what we had with the softbox before, which I think I took a picture of, right? This light, although I know that some people, when they see a bunch of diffusion on a light, they say, well, it's soft. Soft has to do with the size. And this is smaller and brighter, right, than the other light, which means that it's not as soft. You can use it and we can actually create, I mean, obviously I was exaggerating by blowing it up brightness, but we could actually use it for more of a, let's say we have a celebrity like Cadence here and we want to do something that's a little bit more kind of a beauty style light. This might be good for that because it's a little bit harder, right? So we can actually bring it in and kind of maybe bring it up a little bit and create a little bit more of a funkier kind of beauty light. You know, now when we look at this, right? That's got like a good edge to it. So think about the light you're using. Now we have a little bit more of a butterfly style. We're gonna have to adjust this light in the background now because we've got spill though, right? The rotolight is spilling onto the background. So even if I crank this now, we're still never gonna get that real brightness. It actually looks pretty good, but if I wanted it brighter, I couldn't get it, right? So that's gonna be an effect. Now also with this, I'll probably turn this one off because I feel like it's so overpowered. Yeah, it wasn't doing anything. But what we could do here though is now we could come in and use it as like a kicker or hair light. So depending on what you're trying to achieve, different ones, these lights each could be strong as the key. But remember that about what you're trying to achieve, right? When we look at this and we go, well, you know, I want a punchier, more kind of beauty style light, well then I'm probably gonna want to use this rotolight. It's smaller, right? Use the softbox as my kicker because that's gonna have that nice subtle, we can see it on the side of her face, but it's a softbox, right? This creates more of a beauty light. So when I look this way and I'm talking to her, I'm like, so when did you start being so beautiful? You know, she could tell us, right? And that's basically it, right? So whichever light you're using is gonna be based on the style. Well, it's so funny how much brighter that light is because I can look how bright I am. Yeah, that light's a very, very bright light. Which light should I buy? I'm just in the beginning. Well, that's a good question. Okay. Can you clamshell them or even butterfly? Yeah, you could do that. I would, you know, I'm not a big fan of clamshell light for an interview because I feel like it's a little bit too intrusive on the person and they don't feel like they're in the space, at least not this style. Now I don't have the right lights to do what I would do, which is what I call confessional light, because that's like the light that you see, like you see them in reality shows when they go into the little confessionals and they talk. Those are basically fluorescent bulbs. So if you wanted that style, you would use fluorescent tubes like on all four sides, and that would create almost like a giant ring light. Wouldn't be a ring, it'd be square obviously, or rectangle. And that's how I would do a clamshell for this type of setup. I wouldn't do a classic clamshell for an interview because I feel like putting a softbox between myself and the subject would feel awkward. But that's just me. I mean, you know, you could definitely do it that way. Which light should you buy? Okay, so anyways, what light should you buy? Well, that's a good question. If you are trying to, with anything, right, you want to evaluate what you need the most, right? If you are primarily a photographer that occasionally needs to do an interview, something like a flash that has a modeling light that's bright and of good color temperature to use for an interview is probably a better bet. It's going to be more versatile for you. If you are primarily a filmmaker and you occasionally need to make portraits, then I think the constant lights are probably a better way to go. Look at the light you're buying and make sure that they're appropriate, the flash I'm saying, that they've got good color for their modeling lights. That's super important. Not all of them do, and what you'll get is funky color on the skin, and we don't want that in video, because remember, video is harder to color correct. I mean, you can shoot log and blah, blah, but you don't want to have to do that. Like with video, you really want to shoot it as clean as possible. I mean, you don't want to do it in stills either, but you definitely don't want to do it in video. So get good quality. If you have a smaller budget, I'd recommend getting like tungsten lights. They're a good place to start, and you could create a really neat light and really good light on a budget that way. Let's see. That clamshell. Okay. Why didn't you use the rotolight at the same power as to get the same ISO? Oh, the reason why I didn't use well, I eventually did basically adjust the rotor light. The reason why I didn't turn the rotor light down was because I was showing that you might say I'm going to use it because it's more powerful. That I was just demonstrating how much more powerful it was. You could do the same thing, obviously, but we don't need to. I mean, why should I use a higher ISO if I don't need to, right? That's really why you'd use the rotor light. That's the reason why. But I certainly could do it to be the exact same effect. Or at 800. It should go low enough. Let's see. Okay, let's see what we got here. Yeah, we can do that. Definitely get it down low enough. Kind of, yeah, that looks good. There you go, same. Now, if we do that though, we're gonna have to adjust our softbox light because the softbox is gonna be too bright. And obviously I kicked the camera, so now it's in the shot. Because that's what I do. So if we do that, now adjust this one down. Probably do about right there. Can't see it from here. What you would almost always do, by the way, guys, which I don't have set up here is, because I'm working with you, is you would have a monitor on your camera. That way you can see what you're doing. Because a monitor makes all the difference in the world. You could use a light meter for this as well, but I find that just being able to see it is easy enough. We just walk back and forth and adjust the lights until they get where we want them to be. If you have somebody helping you, that's even better, because then you can just say, turn that one up, turn that one down, that kind of thing. There we go. Oh, you couldn't see it because I didn't have the right thing, but there you go. Now we've adjusted it roughly, it might even be still a little bit too bright. Yeah, that should be good. Yeah, but there you go. You can definitely do the same thing if you want that same ISO. I was just showing that it's brighter. That's why. Yeah, I don't know anything about that, that brand you're talking about, but just do your research. If you had the Godox, would you use the modeling light? I don't know. Godox makes a lot of different lights. I'm not sure. You'd have to look. Look at their specs. There's a spec called CRI, which is color rendering index. You want to look at the CRI of the light, and you want it as close to 100 as possible. In the 90s is the minimum I would go. If it's like in the 80s somewhere, I probably wouldn't necessarily go that way. It's not a perfect scale. There's actually a couple of those scales they use, but that's the one most brands will release. Something that's got a CRI in the 90s is what you want. And you want to make sure it's fairly bright. You can look at it and just compare it. Usually they'll have a chart that'll give you the power over a range, like lumens and stuff. Yeah, watt seconds is the power of the flash, not the modeling light, so just be wary there. I mean, with the flash, right, I've got this modeling light is super weak, but this flash can make the room dark. Like if I were to use this flash as my key light, right now I could make the data light and the rotor light, like they're not even turned on really. The flash is so much more powerful when you're flashing, but we're not flashing at this point. And so the watt seconds are not really that relevant. Any other questions about this? I think we did kind of a beauty-ish light. Oh, I didn't show the main reason why I pulled the rotor light out, which is that it can be different colors, right? I was going to do that all along. I got so excited about the other stuff. Let's make it a color. All right, so let's say, we're not going to use it on a different color. Let's say that Caden's got the role of She-Hulk, because they got a She-Hulk movie coming out.
For now.
We want to make her green. Boom, there we go.
Or the Wicked Witch.
All right, there you go. She could be like, if she were doing was it the Wizard of Oz? The Wizard of Oz, right? We could do that. Do not adjust your screen. No, but you would do this on the background or something. Let's do it really quickly because I said I was going to do it, and I'll do it. I will say this, even though you're paying more money for it, and so it might not be worth it for everybody, having battery-powered lights, if you're doing live demos for Adorama at my studio, is super useful. So if you happen to be in that very specific situation. All right, we're going to go like this. Remember, to get good color saturation, we usually want to turn the light down a bit. So I'm going to turn that one down a tiny bit. I'm going to turn this one off. She's right now, on 2020. Do they still have 2020? She's like, I met those.
Secret confession.
Yeah, secret confessions. We can come in here and.
Undercover.
All right, I'm going to turn this up all the way because it's almost always better to have the light than to not have it. I can always turn it down after. I'm kind of feathering it because if I put it right on the background, it's going to eat up some of the saturations. You can see how I do that to get the background even. I'm actually using the monitor that I use for you to show you guys. So, and now we've got, yeah, there we go. You know, and I'm like, hey, Cadence, when did you She-Hulk? Well, not She-Hulk now, but, you know, now we have these different colors, right? So we could do, because it really highlights the one spot on the back wall where they use a different kind of paint, and it's reflective. You can always see that spot whenever we do that. So yeah, there you go. Let's do a different color because, let's see. What color would you like, Cadence?
Purple.
Purple. Boom. All right, there we go. Purple. Now we got a purple background, and we are good to go. Boom, right? So these RGBW lights are really great for that. Obviously, too, I could add a fill light if I wanted to, or if I was being super lazy, which I am right now. It would not be an onset if we did not bust out the Brooklyn reflector. Artisanal reflectors made in Brooklyn. Boom. Handcrafted by Seth on a balcony in Manhattan. The spray glue alone was worth. Well, this one doesn't have any spray glue, but yeah, we can see that's a still right now. We've got a still shot, nice and simple. Boop. Can she see anything when the rotolight is on her? Definitely not. Am I cutting the head off on purpose? No, I didn't realize. Yes, I 100% am. Perfect for a wicked shoot. Yeah, wicked. There we go. We're on it. Okay, let's get the lights here. Yeah, that's the one thing that I mentioned at the beginning. And again, that's one reason why I left it blasted and I went with a different ISO is that if you're using constant lights to light something to get a really shallow depth of, a deep depth of field or a low ISO, it's often going to be super bright, which is going to be uncomfortable for your subject. So one of the disadvantages, if you will, of constant lights is that we need to be really aware of our environment. We can't just walk into a room and blast it with flash and still shoot at 2.8. So we have to really pick our spot well, and we want to make sure that we're thinking about where we're putting our subject. In this case, I just turned the overheads off. That's usually the best thing to do. Get somebody into an area where it doesn't matter if you turn off the lights. It might be a conference room. It might be a hallway or something where you can just get away from the lights or put like something to block it. Get into an area where you can kill most of the ambient light so that you don't need a ridiculous amount of power to do it. And with, you know, this light is like 150 watts, I think, approximately. And this thing is probably about the same. You don't need a lot of light to do an interview. Keep it close. That's really the key. Okay, let's see if we got any final things. We do. Robert, you say something that's 90% correct, and I'm going to correct it, not to call you out, but because it's super important and a common thing that people say. When you turn the rotolight power down, you also reduce the stress on your model and soften the light. The soften the light part, no. Softness has nothing to do with the brightness of the light. Softness is size. It might seem like small to like mention this every single time, but it's important when we're working, especially in a professional environment, that people are using the same terms. Hardness and softness of the light has to do with shadow transition, which has to do with the size of the light source. Being less contrasty, which is probably what you're describing, yes. Softer, no. Soft hard is a really important thing to make sure we get right. Can she see? No, she can't. Am I cutting the head off? Yes, I am. It's always good, right? Yeah, I think if you actually look at most media, you will see that cutting the head off, as you say, is, yeah. Stop looking at the books from 1975 that are trying to teach you how to do something and get into the modern media, you'll see that this is not an uncommon way to shoot. Anyways, but I love that somebody has to bring it up every time. Anyways, if you liked what you saw here, or even if you didn't, go ahead and hit like, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell. This is Cadence Frank. You can see her back all the time because she's my favorite. We will be back on the 19th of May with something really super cool. I think I'm doing cinematic lighting. So more stuff with constant lights. I really want to show you guys some of the strengths of these constant lights. We're going to do something a little more dramatic and a little funkier. So come back on the 19th. I'll see you then. If you haven't started following the podcast, I would appreciate that as well. The link is way up at the top of the chat, and I am hopefully going to be out if I can figure out how to do this. I think I do this. This is the awkward moment where I'm trying to make the thing go off. Nothing's happening. Okay, I'm gonna do it this way. I've given up on getting it perfect. There we go.